Alright guys, give me like a minute or so. See where I am at. Error has occurred. Hey, if anybody is there, do me a favor. For some reason, so I apologize for being boring, everybody. I'm like, no comments and reaction. There we go. Oh, strange. Okay. If you're watching this, let me know. I'm dealing with a little bit of mayhem today. I don't know why things are not working the way they're supposed to, or the way they have been the last couple weeks. So if you give me a minute, I will get myself going. And say hello. I guess we're doing this on the Facebook. Me too, Black Math. Alright, I apologize. This is my live lesson. It's supposed to be on YouTube. For some reason, I had to switch to Facebook today. And I'm kind of figuring some stuff out. So give me just a second. Please bear with me. Things are kind of messy today. Yeah, YouTube. Hey, David. YouTube is not working for me in the least. Do me a favor, if you guys have this, can you share it so that people know where to find us? I'm suddenly scrambling. It's all David's fault, yes. Alright, so I let people on the forum know. Posted it here. Allegedly, I mean, there should be a... let me just check on YouTube real quick. I would love to know why YouTube took a dump on me today. If you guys want to line up questions, if you have questions about the lesson for this week, that'd be cool. Oh, look. No. So it looks like I'm streaming to... Oh no. Oh well. Alright guys. I apologize for the mayhem. Yeah, it looks like YouTube just took a dump on itself, which is kind of a drag. So, before I get rolling... And this is actually streaming to YouTube, but it looks like it's just a big black box, so... I guess I'll get started. Last week we talked about Mixolydian, the first Mixolydian mode. This week, and actually I did a bunch of stuff on the last week's live that was on YouTube. That's actually this week's video lesson. But I've got a couple other things I thought maybe we'd cover, and then I kind of answer some questions and whatnot today. Especially since I just ate a bunch of time. Wow. Even my iPad's messed up. Hang on a second. Oh. Okay. So if we take a look at this week. Last week we did part 1. Actually, we did still here. Yeah. So this was last week's, and if you have questions about that one, feel free to ask. I'm not gonna do anything too much about that one. This one, I just took all the stuff we talked about. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. It seemed to work. Yeah, so we'll do this here today. Perfect timing, as usual. Okay, so we'll just do this here today. So let's talk about and the best part is the backing tracks I needed on my channel are on YouTube, and I can't play those back either. So, it's a wonderful day. So let's get rid of this. All right, so just as a little bit of review, we were talking about how basically that Mixolydian mode, it's important. I'm not in love with it because it's kind of boring by itself. One of the things that I like to do, though, is I like to use it kind of as a substrate for all the interesting things that we do. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start with the major triad. This is the top neck. Right? And you've actually got a lot of duplication of stuff here. Let me actually move this guy over here. That's not important. So we got root 3, 5. We also have root 3, 5. One of the things I try and get my students to do is to start seeing how things duplicate all over the fretboard. That was something that we discussed last time. So we can play through this arpeggio, root 3, 5, root 3, 5, root, which is basically just your E shape, right? But we also have the ability to go through a bunch of different ones. We'd even go like root 3, 5, root 3, 5, root 3, if we wanted to. You know, this is basically your D shape from down here, right? But here it is in the key of A. And the first thing that I was getting to last week and in this lesson is the idea that we can actually embellish those chord tones. We don't have to worry about playing a scale. All right, we can actually just play the chord tones, and to get away from the chord tones in order to make it interesting, one of the things that we can do is basically play an approach tone from a half step below. And you just make kind of little, almost like jump blues kinds of lines. Right, those kinds of things. They work really good for swing music. That's the first embellishment. That's the half step below. If you look at that guy right there, the second one down, that's where the green guys are all the half step. We use especially the half step below the third quite a bit. The other one that we can do is the a scale tone above. Sorry guys, I'm a little scattered after the mayhem of YouTube. So we've got a scale tone above the root, which is 2. And that's these are the yellow ones. This is the third neck down. The 6, which is scale tone above the 5. half step above the 3, and so on. All right, and you make these. Right, and those notes actually provide the contrast. Hey, Larry. That actually give us a little bit more interest without playing the whole scale. The idea of enclosures is where we play the scale tone above the yellow bit and then the green bit and then resolve. Right, and that's just me making lines only using the arpeggio and then these various embellishments, the half step below and then the scale tone above, or the combination of which actually gives us the idea of the enclosure. And you can use the enclosure idea on any, if we go play minor. Alright, it'll work for everything. It's just a way of organizing these pitches. Anybody have any questions about that one? That's basically just a review from last week, but it's actually in the PDF. If you guys need the PDF, you can go to the original. Actually, maybe I'll just put the link to the PDF here. Hang on a second, so that you guys have it. Oh, it looks like I'm actually live on YouTube. Today is kind of a, for lack of a better word, a shit show. So I'm going to put the link for the PDF here. That's in case you need that. You just download it. It's a free download if you want to follow along. All right. Next page of this. Man, I wish, you know what, give me a second. Let me see if I can do the, I can play the backing track off the computer and have this actually work. Funky Mixo in A. Can you guys hear the backing track? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to deal with just what that volume is. So I can kind of do this. I don't think I'll have a feedback issue. One more time. How's that? Okay. Hopefully that works for you guys. All right. So the idea here is we can go between the Mixolydian sound and the minor pentatonic sound pretty freely. And what that does, that's another one of these things where it pushes you out of the sound a little bit. It's mostly the sound, but it resolves when you get back to the Mixolydian idea. So if I'm thinking... So Mixolydian... blues scale. Alright. That last little bit right there, I really make a big distinction for my students with the blues scale and the minor pentatonic. Right. Partially because we tend to, as guitar players, we think that everything's a blues scale. Alright. In this context, the blues scale is a minor pentatonic with the flat 5 added. Alright, so you can play it in the vertical boxes, right? And that's one way of doing it. That's the way most of us learn. But I really like these 2 and 3 scale patterns because that gives me this line across the fretboard. And I talk about this all the time. You know, I really don't want to play vertically. It's difficult to be melodic and musical playing vertically, right? But if I'm playing on that line, all right, I don't know, for some reason it's just easier for this stuff to flow. All right, so I've got the pentatonic idea. All right, I combine it with a Mixolydian. All right, and that kind of gets me a little out of the tonality and a little and more back in. Right, just a little different. Anybody have any questions about that one? No? If I move ahead and you still got a question, make sure you type it in there. The chromatic passing tones are pretty important for me too. I love the chromaticism, not because I really play out with it, but I use it to connect bits of the harmony. Right? So the easiest one, this first one, is we're connecting the root to the minor 7. Right? So I can go approach tone from the 3rd, half step into that. All right, do the root, chromatic, and the minor 7. That actually already sounds kind of bluesy or slinky. All right, combine it with the pentatonic idea. Enclosure. Right, you can kind of see all those lines actually have connective chromatic passing tones in them. All right. All the stuff on this page is basically connecting chord tones. All right, we've got one way for us to connect from the root to the minor or the major 3rd. If you notice there, I'm skipping a note, right? Just because I like how that sits in time. Right? You could. Right? There's no rule that you have to do it one way or the other. You could do all of them. You just have to make sure that whatever you do, it works in time. It works in the pocket. And for me, I really try and make sure that all this chromaticism is really just within notes that define the harmony. So in the case of this, that's the root and the 3rd. Right? I can do all kinds of right? It all still works over that A chord. All right. The 3 ways I've got it on here is the root to the 3rd like this. I've got the root to the minor 7. And then I've got the 3rd to the 5th. All right. That's one of my favorite Charlie Parker licks. We do this in the video. So I go root, approach tone into the 3rd, and then chromatically up to the 5th. So that one I went backwards. I went 5, approach tone into the 4, and then back up to the 5 because it sits in time pretty good like that. Then approach into the 3rd. Right. You can see how I can actually make longer lines that don't really go as far intervallically because we're taking up time and we're taking up rhythm by connecting the dots with the chromatic ideas. Right? So you can play things that are really wide. Right? And that's one sound, but the closer the notes are together, that's another sound too, right? So I've got this idea where I can do all this chromatic passing stuff. Right? And because I'm using this dominant 7 arpeggio as basically my framework that I hang all this stuff on, and that I kind of, like when you pour concrete. I don't know if it's probably a bad analogy. All right. But, a lot of times when you pour concrete, you put pieces of wood down, right? And that's the form, and then you pour the concrete in there. All right. That's kind of what I'm doing, right? I'm using the arpeggio as kind of the form for the chromaticism. And as long as I'm starting and ending on those notes in one way or another, it'll make make sense to the ears, especially when I'm playing over the backing track. Because I can play any note I want to, and we've done this before. And if I don't end on something that's a chord tone, it's kind of ugly, but I can play through that note. We're in the D right now. But that's kind of how I get those longer lines put together without having to like go all the way up and down the fretboard. On this backing track, the one that goes with this lesson, it's mostly an A7, but there's like an 8-bar bridge on the D7 or the D dominant. All right, and the easiest way to do that, and this kind of a bluesy thing, is just play the minor pentatonic or the blues scale over that D, and then you can go back to your A Mixolydian. You can also play the D Mixolydian. These are different sounds or different extractions. So I'm going to take a second. I'm going to look at Steve's question. I get less somewhere between the distinction between blues, which some, actually let me put this on. I can, here's Steve's question here. And get rid of this for a moment. Oops, I overdid that one. Oh, I need to get rid of the overlay. Somewhere between the distinction between blues, which are restrictive in terms of form, and jazz influences. I guess I want my playing to say something as a phrase and not sound bad. Is the distinction between blues and jazz or some other voice important? At the end of the day, these are all the same vocabulary. You know, if I'm playing blues, if I'm playing something that's more I'm playing a very specific vocabulary there because that's the style. Right? But if I'm playing like over a funky blues, like a fusion thing, right, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be playing a much different vocabulary, and they're all based off the dominant chord, right? But I'm not going to play all the crazy out stuff over something that's really more like a little Walter tune. I'm going to play, you know. Even that's a little bit much. Right? But if I'm playing over something that that has more of a funky groove, it's more of a modern thing, and they're playing more sophisticated harmonies, then yeah, I'm gonna play more chromaticism. I'm gonna play more like altered sounds. I'm gonna kind of dig in. At the end of the day, though, melodies have to make sense, and what helps melodies make sense is this idea that we're you know, we're coming home to something. You know, we're arriving someplace, right? If I'm playing, you know, just that much. Right, I haven't arrived any place. Right, I arrived at that note. That whole lick was really about getting there. Right. All right. All right. You got to listen. Listen to what people do. Listen to a lot of music. When you play, listen to what you're playing. Does that make sense? It's hard to say listen to what you're playing, but at the end of the day, that's kind of it. You know, if you're not engaged, you know, you can't really play stuff and have it actually arrive at a place that actually gives you a phrase or a structural ending, especially when we're improvising and we're soloing. Okay, does that make sense, or did I go too far? That might have been a little bit much. All of the stuff that we're talking about is really designed to give you ways of getting used to arriving at the harmony. So that's the chromatic part. Hi, Jeremy. That's kind of a funny question, and I know you're messing with me, but you know, it's funny because it's just like an ecosystem of dominant sounds, right? I mean, sure, because Jeremy, I know you play, you know, you're transcribing an Alan Holdsworth book, so you've got probably 42,000 more ways of getting around a dominant chord than me. But at the end of the day, what makes something dominant? All right, and that's kind of the thing. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I mean, we could say all of that is Mixolydian if we wanted to, even though it's not. I'm using all kinds of things in there that I would use over a seventh chord, which I'd use a Mixolydian sound for. But that's all major pentatonic. Maybe do that and really call it Mixolydian. All right, this last one was the thing that we talked about last week, right? The triad with the fourth added, all right? And that's literally just there to kind of help us get used to this idea that you can play chord tones, and because they're all boring like that, if you add the fourth, it provides enough tension to give you a little bit of melody. All right. Also, it ends up being kind of the framework that I hang a lot of those ideas on. It's just the easiest way to get away from the chord tones long enough to create something melodic. And that's just kind of a crutch of mine that I like doing. Okay, questions. So we've kind of depleted that guy right there. All right. And all of the stuff that I talked about, those are in the YouTube videos for the week. Actually, let's not look at my crotch for a minute. What I was thinking about doing was talking about the idea, just in a real simple fashion, of what a tritone substitution is. Right? Just talk about thirds and sevenths. Now, if I were to do this in a way that makes sense. Let's get rid of my face here. This thing not gonna let me write. Oops, hang on a second. This might screw this up. Action cam. Yeah, I'm all fancy pants. Let's see if this guy actually kind of works here. This has been like technological mayhem. There we go. Okay, so if we think about, here's our root, 3, 5, minor 7. All right, I'm going to do this in one color, and then we're going to talk about the other chord. All right, root, 3, 5. Here's flat 7. Root. This is all the stuff that's on the other thing. All right, we've got this tritone here. This 3 and the 7. All right. Now if I come down here and I do the 4 chord, all right, so we're going from A7 to D7. All right. We've got root, 3, 5, flat 7, root, 3, 5, flat 7. Actually, I'm going to put some of the stuff down here for a minute. Okay, so on that one, we've got that tritone, but it's down a fret. Okay, and then if I do the same thing with the 5 chord, let's do that guy. We're getting fancy here. So the 5 chord, the E7. All right, so we're at root 3, 7, 5, root. So do 3 and 5. I'll fill in the rest of this guy here just to. All right. So then we also have a tritone here. Yeah, I don't know like what's going on with ye old YouTube today, but it's kind of driving me nuts. So I wonder. Oops. Nope. Sorry. This is what we want here. All right. So you've got the tritone in a couple places. And I kind of want to just show you the chord, or the easiest way to look at if you're getting through a blues and you want to comp through something, but also if you want to look for target notes. So in the A, we've got root 3, 5, flat 7, root 3, right? The 3 and the 5, the major third and the minor seventh, are kind of the key to this dominant sound, right? And the reality is that as long as the band is playing an A7 chord, or if the bass player is playing a root, you just need to play the third and the minor seventh, and that's going to define that as a dominant chord, right? In anything, if I play the third and the major 7, that gives us a major 7 chord. If I go minor third and minor 7, that gives us a minor 7 chord, right? You can move those things around to get whatever chords you want. And this is kind of the smallest or kind of shell voicing that you can use for something like this to get through. So if you're playing through a blues, right, you can just play these two guys to comp. There's the 1 chord, that's the right. And then if you notice on the D7, nothing wants to work for me today. This is like, it's ridiculous. All right, we just moved down a fret, right? So the minor 7 for the A chord, all right? That guy is going to go, I said the third, this guy, is going to go down a half step to that, all right? And then the minor 7 is going to go down a half step to that guy right there. So I'm basically just going, here's the 1 chord, I go down a half step, and there's the 4 chord. And the best part is, if I need the 5 chord, I can just go up a fret, right? And that's where we are here. We go up 2 frets basically from the 4 to the 5, and then back there. Now if you're soloing, even if you're just playing a pentatonic scale, right, and you hit the notes that are specific to that chord in that tritone, you'll be able to hit the change. Right, there's the 4 chord. There's the minor 7. There's the minor 7 of the E. Hitting the third of the E during a blues is kind of not particularly bluesy, but sometimes I'll do it. It's a little square sounding. All right, but that's where those notes are. So if I man, so let's say I got some backing tracks on here, so I can give me just a second. All this stuff is normally on my YouTube channel. Whose guitar play along is this one? Nope. I have this great collection of blues. I'm sorry. Bear with me. Everything kind of went sideways here. Well, here's this. Who knows what this one is? Some recordings. Wow, nothing is working. This is super awesome. All right, you're gonna have to take my word for it. All right, so one of the cool things. Well, all right, are you guys following me so far? Let me back up just for a second. So it just kind of feels like I planned out today, and it's kind of turned into a little bit of a disaster. COVID. Yeah, it is just the weirdest thing. It's just that's not the right backing track. It really is just this. And like, I updated my operating system a couple weeks ago, but I haven't really used iTunes or Music or whatever they call it. And oh wait. Okay, here we go. Found it, or found something. So there's the tritone for the A. And it goes, there's the 4 chord. There's the 1 chord. Here's the 5. There's the 4 chord, and then back to the 1. There's that tritone there. There's the tritone there. Okay. So that's the first idea there. All right, you guys follow me so far? Do you want me to back up? Yes, no. Okay. So the idea of a tritone substitution, and this is kind of a jazzy concept, but it's one of the places where I can kind of get outside a little bit, right? Is this idea that you can take any chord, like we're playing A7, and you got that 3rd and 7th right there, but if you move the root up a tritone, right, you're going to get a chord that has the same 3rd and 7 except for they're turned around, right? So in this case, the G is the 7 of the A, and the C sharp is the 3rd. If we go to E flat right here, then that G is actually the major 3rd of the E flat chord. That C sharp, which we actually are going to call D flat, and it's basically the minor 7 of the E flat chord. But what that does, and if you guys remember last week, I did this triad thing where I went up, I did triad pairs and tritones. This is part of this tritone substitution idea. Basically, you're taking advantage of the fact that because of how symmetrical a tritone is, a tritone is basically the exact spot in between a root and its octave, right? It's the same distance either way, which gives it that really, unsettled sound. But because of that, the symmetricalness means that we can play some games with it. All right, over this backing track, let me do something kind of messed up. So that idea right there is basically me just taking and playing the what we call the tritone substitution, or that E flat dominant 7 chord over the A, right? And what that gives us is that gives us the flat 5, that's the tritone, the minor 7, this is the flat 9, and the third. So it's got 2 of the chord tones that are important for A flat, but then it's got 2 what we call altered tones, that flat 5 and the flat 9. So it gives us this really weird kind of dissonant thing. This is kind of where we get into where things can be different or interesting enough that we need to resolve back to our parent arpeggio. Right? The other thing that can happen is that, I don't know if I want to go this far with this, but if you're playing a jazzy blues and it's a 2 to a 5 to a 1, you play the 2 and then you can do the tritone sub off of the 5, right? So the 5 would be the E, and I'm just moving that down a tritone, and then resolve it down to the 1 chord, and that gives it this really nice smooth sound. That works the same as so even if I'm just playing a line, right, that line is going to have this feeling that it needs to be resolved because I'm playing all of those notes that need to actually go someplace, and that someplace is back to the 1 chord. I love the tritone sub things. That stuff I've dressed up a regular blues, but I'm using those substitutions in there. So that's going to be a lesson later on, an actual lesson, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about since today's actual lesson kind of went down the toilet. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second here. My stuff's just not working the way I want it to work today. I'll let you guys ask questions, make comments, make fun of me. There is something going on with the YouTube. Have you guys seen if YouTube is still messed up? Let me just kind of see if YouTube is still messed up. It's working. There's one person watching that. Fabulous. Okay. So as far as this week's lesson goes, that's kind of covering the stuff from the video. I always expect people are going to ask questions about this stuff. I mean, I try and lay it out in a way that makes sense, but I also figure someone's going to have something they need to deal with. Actually, let me just check here, make sure there's no questions. No, not there. All right. You know what? I'm gonna play for a minute, and while I'm playing, you guys can kind of figure out. Here's one of the other backing tracks. This is from the expanded blues guitar set. Tritone sub. There's that tritone. All right, guys. It's today was a little bit of a shit show. I do have to admit. Get rid of that guy. I'm get rid of. Whoops. Hello. Goodbye. All right. Hopefully I'll figure out what the problem was with YouTube this week. And then hopefully have a better a better time next week. Next week's lesson, I think we're going to talk specifically about pentatonic scales. I've got a couple lessons about pentatonic scales as other concepts relate to them. But what we're going to do is it's going to be a pretty basic construction kind of thing. What a minor pentatonic scale is, what a major pentatonic scale is, what they are relative to some of the modes we've worked on to this point. How we can actually make them fit over certain kinds of chords or chord progressions, and how I use them really as a framework for a lot of what I play diatonically. So that's kind of what's coming up. The next couple of weeks are going to be kind of pentatonic-y, and part of that is because that's where I want my conservatory class to go. So I use these video lessons for them. So unless you guys have any questions, I'm going to let you roll. I apologize for all the technical snafu and the fact that my lesson plan went completely down the toilet today. But hopefully it was useful to you guys. If you like it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. If it's working. Give the videos thumbs up and all that other kind of happy stuff. And I'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.